Hello and welcome to Ted Lasso Post-Match, the officially unofficial official podcast for Ted Lasso, where I'm Vinny and I'm joined by my good friend Aidan.
Yahoo.
And we discuss each episode of the latest and last season of Ted Lasso as it airs, and we crown our MVP of the episode, our most valuable player, whoever we think achieved the most.
That's right.
So, how are you, Aidan?
I'm good. I'm swell. I'm sad that you just identified season 3 of Ted Lasso as the last one. Has that been officially confirmed, or are we still just running with the whole thing that we think it is?
I believe it has been officially confirmed.
Has it? Man.
I'm sure it was confirmed a while ago.
No, for ages it's been like
the last season.
It's been like the end of their initial plan, and Sudeikis really doesn't want to do more. But like, there's been a lot of talk about it continuing without him, or whether it will continue on to like a spin-off thing.
I don't think it will continue without him.
They've never officially said this is it, and so that's what's like.
I'm sure that I read somewhere that this was the last season. So.
No, but like everyone's kind of calling it that, but I don't think it's been like officially
I'm calling
said
it that.
All right, okay, that's the important thing.
Officially confirmed on the unofficial podcast.
Yes, it's about as official as this podcast is what exactly I was about to say. Today's episode is International Break. And I guess the general premise is that it's sort of like the International Football League thing is going on. So they stop playing the Premier League for a couple of weeks so that, England players can go from different clubs to play for England. And, same thing for all of the countries. Some players are heading home to their countries to play. Sam is not. Big sad for Sam.
Big sad.
Yeah. General vibe for this episode, Vinny. Was it a vibe? This is a vibe check for you. Was it a good vibe?
A vibe check. Yeah, it was a good vibe. I liked the episode. I did think it was a bit long. I think it dragged in some places. But overall, I did really enjoy the episode. It felt like a very good Ted Lasso episode. Some episodes this season haven't quite hit it for me. In this episode, it felt like a classic standard Ted Lasso ep. So I did enjoy it. It just felt a bit long in some places.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. Like, I think about 35 minutes in and I was like, this is great. Like, I'm loving this. And then I saw that it was still like 25 minutes to go, and I was like, I'm feeling it now. And then that last 25 minutes seemed to go really slow for me. But yeah, I think it's another case of Lasso. Well, with this season of Lasso, having everything in it is really good, but there's just too much per episode. For example, the Sam stuff just felt, even though it ties into the Edwin thing with Edwin Akifi, I think that's his name, coming back. Like, that stuff's cool and great, but it didn't really do anything for this episode. Like,
yeah, I agree.
It was a bit of a weird inclusion.
This is exactly what I was thinking. Like, we've spoken about it before with other episodes of this season, but like you just said, but there did feel like there was a lot of different storylines going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, some of them I was more engaged with than others, which I think is, bound to happen. But I actually couldn't pick out a definitive main plot for this episode.
It's tricky
because there's a lot of focus. They put a lot of main focus on a few of the different characters, to the point where I'm like, well, whose episode is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I struggled with, because it's like, you've got to pay attention to literally every single thing, because all of these characters are going through something really, really important. Apart from Sam, which I would say is like the secondary storyline.
Yeah. I think.
But yeah, like, all of the other storylines, I'm like, I don't know which one is the main one here.
I think like Rebecca and Keely, for me, like those two, and again, it is two plot lines, but those two were the closest thing to being like the main plot for me. And then I thought the Nate and Roy stuff tied in pretty nicely with those plot lines. And then you have stuff from Richmond, like, the players that made it or didn't make it into the international teams. And a lot of that is like funny stuff, but it also adds to the runtime. And it's like, I really enjoy all this stuff, but it is just a little too much going on.
Yeah, I agree. I think the stuff with the international players, Danny and Van Dam, I'm like, this really didn't do anything to the story, you know. It was just there sort of filling out whatever. But
And it
yeah, like
provided
to
some
me, I was
wholesome
like,
moments.
yeah, it did. And it provided some good comedy, especially with like Danny being so like, you are my enemy.
That's so good.
Like
That's
Danny
so
is a
good.
great character. But yeah, it didn't feel relevant to anything else that was
Yeah.
going on.
When Danny pulled that whole "you are my enemy" card, and he's crunching Van Damme's Doritos and stuff like that, I was like, is
Yeah.
this like the Danny we don't see? Like, is this how Danny treats every other team, and we've just never seen it before?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially.
So let's start with that sort of basic Richmond thing. Then we've already touched sort of on the Danny Van Damme thing. It was probably the
Yeah.
funniest shit in the episode, I think.
Yeah, it was quite a serious episode, I'd say.
It was, and so those moments where Danny kicks Van Damme in the face with a football is that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that stuff, and then even at the end when we do see all the players watching, or like everyone getting around Jamie when he gets to sort of get substituted into the England game or whatever.
Yeah.
That stuff I just thought was really wholesome, and it was like a nice
Yeah, I did.
inclusion, but it's just one of those things. It's just there's just so much in this episode that even I don't know.
Yeah.
You'd hate to see this good stuff go, but yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed seeing the Richmond team, you know, come together and watch like Danny Van Damme and Jamie's debuts on their national squads. I thought that was really, yeah, like you said, like really wholesome, you know. Because they don't have to do that, especially because like some of them just don't, like obviously a few of them are like English, but some of them are just, you know, why are they watching an England game, but they're watching it because they're supporting Jamie, and I just think that's really nice.
Yeah, and they
I
all
really
cheer when
that.
he goes out. It's so good.
Yeah.
He's cute. And yeah, what we sort of touched on, Sam doesn't get picked for the Nigerian team, and we find out it's because of Edwin Akufo, because he's gave the Nigerian team a lot of money, and also just like what a shit bloke. The fact that he hired out all of Ola, his restaurant, he like hired all that restaurant out, and so his company is not going to make any money that night because he's booked out the whole night himself, and there's no one there to get food. And I was like, that's so shit. And it was annoyingly shit.
And then they obviously get the meal for free as well.
Exactly. So I hope this isn't the end of Edwin. When we'll talk about the rest of his plotline this episode shortly, but I hope this isn't the end of him, because I feel like this is a really weird inclusion, that this whole scene, there's like 5 minutes of screen time based around this Sam stuff, and it's just a really weird inclusion that bulks up this episode. You want it to come back next week, like it's got to.
Yeah.
Cheeky.
Like
what did you think of the
secondary
Sam
villain
stuff?
almost. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It was sort of lost on me at points, just because I was like, there's a lot going on. Who is this guy? What's going on? I don't understand where this has come from. It really sort of fell, literally, like, feels like it was just plonked into the episode. But I mean, I did enjoy it. I felt really sorry for Sam. The Edwin is, like you know, we've established that Rupert is sort of the main villain of the show. But this episode sort of basically took the focus away from Rupert's villainous, and put it onto Edwin, which I enjoyed, because, you know, I mean, I like Rupert. I think he's a great villain, but it was interesting to see sort of another villainy character. And I thought, you know, it was quite refreshing, because obviously we're used to Rupert. We've had Rupert for 3 seasons now. So I did enjoy like a slightly different dynamic introduced. And, you know, someone else to not like as much.
Yeah.
Ted Lasso is full of very likable characters. So it's really nice to have characters you don't like for a change.
Yeah, it's like the most likable bunch of people ever. I think as well, because this episode is they sort of try and give a bit of humanity to Rupert, and they sort of they make you think, are they going to do a Rupert redemption arc here? And then they sort of pull the rug out from underneath you at the end.
That's what I was thinking, you know. Yeah.
But so I thought having Edwin in this episode to sort of replace Rupert as a villain, so that you can sort of flesh out a more human side of Rupert, I thought was a good decision. So
agreed.
Mate, let's talk about Keely. Oh, actually, last thing on Sam is that when Jamie came in and checked in on Sam after being announced that he wasn't in the Nigerian team, I thought that was like a great
Yeah,
moment for Jamie, and he's like, "You're right, bro. Like, really, you were good."
yeah.
Peak, peak
And I
Jamie.
liked that Jamie wore the number 24 for Sam.
Oh, is that Sam's number?
That's Sam's
Ah,
number on
yeah,
Richmond. So Jamie
yeah.
wore that on the England squad as
That's
like,
wholesome.
yeah. And I love that.
That's
Jamie
so
is
wholesome.
the best character development goes to Jamie in this show.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, I got some strong thoughts on Rebecca when we get to Rebecca in terms of her
Oh
character arc
yeah.
because
Yeah,
she's
yeah, yeah.
she's come a long way. Yeah, let's talk about Keely. So her company is shut down
Yeah.
after Jack pulled her funding, which
Yeah.
is yeah,
Not
it's all
surprising.
not surprising. We kind of all knew it was going here, and it's probably dragged on a couple episodes, but we've got here,
Hmm.
and yeah, so that sort of sends Keely into a spiral. She spends a lot of the episode just sort of drinking around London, ending
Yeah.
up in
By
Maeve's pub.
herself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is very it's very sad. I like Keely a lot, so it's really sad seeing her go through this stuff, but
Defo.
she has a good little moral to her at the end. I like she buys Barbara a snow globe, and
Yeah.
Barbara's so funny about it.
Yeah.
Like, I have
I
to buy
love
them myself.
Barbara. What a
Can I have the
great
receipt?
character.
Yeah, she's good. Especially like the first like 4 episodes of this podcast, we were like, "Oh, who's her name? That person." Yeah, that character.
Yeah.
But it's nice to actually be like, "Yeah, Barbara, an official
Yeah.
character. She's done some
Yeah.
stuff, and it's
She's
wholesome
done
at the
some
end."
stuff. We've got to know her a little bit. I feel like we've got, as an audience, we've gotten to know her at the same rate that Keely's gotten to know her.
Yeah, yeah,
Because obviously, like by like this episode, she's like, "Oh, I wish we had more time together." And then, like as an audience, you're sort of like, "Oh yeah, I wish we had as well." And it's nice
yeah,
because at the beginning, you're like, "Oh, this character seems a bit, a stickler for the rules and everything." But
yeah.
actually, she's really funny.
She's kind of like introduced as like a bit of like a rude, yeah, like a tough piece of work. But then all of a sudden, you sort of
Yeah,
slowly realize she's actually just quite a weird gal with a little
yeah.
snow globe collection and yeah, severe OCD on that front, which is cute. But um, yeah. So in Keely's spiral, May gives her some advice,
Hmm.
and yeah, sort of talking about the ups and downs kind of thing, or is that sort of what Rebecca gets into at the end?
No, I think I like so the chat that she has with May, I really liked. I've
Yep.
really enjoyed that scene. Just because like it had a really funny joke in where she was like, "Oh, May, what is that short for anything?" And May said maybe. And then
Yeah.
she was like, "Oh, how long have you been here, maybe?"
It's so subtle as well, right? Like,
Oh, it just cracked me up.
it kicked in for me like
Um,
5 seconds late. It was
yeah,
so funny.
it was just I was like, that is spot on, that is so good. That's so
Hmm.
Keely as well.
Yeah.
But I liked that I I like that May is like typical landlady of a pub, just
Hmm.
listens to people's problems, gives a couple words of wisdom, and then like that's it, sends them on their way. And that's exactly what she did with Keely.
Yeah.
And she said that, yeah, no, I think that Keely said that, everything she touches turns to shit. And May said shit helps things grow. And I
That's
thought
right. That's it.
that is such a simple line,
Hmm.
but like, wow, it's such a good line.
It's so good. Tell you what though, May needs to be careful because she's gonna get done. So because let me tell you, that pour that she did for Keely was not like one shot. It was not 2 shots. She did not measure that shit. That was like a big drink.
No, I'd say that was probably 2. She had ice
No.
in the glass.
Yeah. If I get like a straight shot in good old Australia, where I live, in case you didn't know, it is like honestly like one shot I swear is like this big. Like it's like
Do
the
you
size
have
of a fingernail.
standard measurements? Because in
Yeah.
England, it's 25 mil for one shot, 50 mil for a double.
Yeah, I assume it's the
But
same here.
you're
Same
allowed
here.
to free pour. So like some bar people free pour and it's big. Yeah,
Right.
that's what made it. She just free pouring. You tend to count. You go like 1, 2, 3. I can't remember what 2. And then it's like,
Right.
oh,
I'm just saying
that's equivalent.
it looked like a big drink for someone who was clearly quite drunk already. Who, by the way, do you know Temple does a great job at acting drunk? Like it's so like realistic,
Yeah,
just like the slight
it
slurring.
is.
It's not overdone. It's just like realistic.
And it's very like, because obviously in this episode and in this scene in particular, she's quite sad. She's sort of like in a bit of like self-pity.
Yep.
And she's not getting pissed and be like, oh, she's just sat at a bar, sort of like ignoring the messages, and then she's just, I think that's where the maybe thing came from. She takes everything very literally.
Yeah.
Has a bit of brain fog now and then, and I'm like, even like just her face, like I'm like, that is a drunk lady.
Yeah.
That is a woman that's had a few drinks, and yeah, it was spot on.
Yeah, she does a really good job at it. Eventually, yeah, so she goes back, talks to Barbara, and then she goes and talks to Rebecca, and Rebecca sort of agrees to fund Keely's company after sort of talking her through it a little bit and kind of saying,
Yeah,
it's going to be a
Keely
bit of a roller
didn't
coaster.
necessarily want that. Yeah,
It was definitely a Rebecca pushed thing, but yeah, she's
yeah.
sort of talking Keely through the fact that there's going to be lots of ups and downs, but if it's what you want to do, it's what you want to do, which is kind of the moral of this episode, and I'll get into that in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, focusing on the reason, the episode kind of talks into like remembering the reason why you got into something, why you got into what you do, and to remember the fun that you started
where
with.
you started. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last words on Keely?
Well, do you want to talk about Roy and Keely, or do you want to leave that?
I reckon save that for Roy, because that's more of a Roy plot thing, I think, which we'll sort of get into in a sec. But of course, Barbara comes up at the end of the episode as well to give her back the snow globe. She's like, yeah, I only get them when I resign for jobs, or when I, what does she say?
Yeah, that is what she says. Yeah. When she leaves a job.
Yeah. And yeah, so she resigns from Jack and starts working with Keely, which is,
I will say that there was a very funny Barbara scene in the episode which cracked me up, is when she's wearing that tracksuit that says juicy and then Barbara goes, oh, thank you, I like clothes that tell the truth.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that is spot on. It's so funny. There was a lot of jokes in this episode that really hit for me. I laughed a lot.
I loved
and considering it's I'd say it's quite a serious episode.
Yeah.
The humor was all on point for me.
The awkward guy that works in the office, when he leaves, he's like, Keely, I want you to know that you're the best boss I ever had. And she's like, oh, thanks. And he's like, yes, and the hottest. It's so funny.
And then Keely's like, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. I love that dude.
There's just so many good little jokes. I loved it.
No, good. Okay, let's talk about Roy then, because it's kind of natural, because these two plots work pretty closely together. Happy Uncle Roy Day.
Oh, brilliant. Loved it.
Great way to start it.
Scene.
Yeah, they invite Jamie because he talks about Jamie so much to...
They're best friends.
They are bloody best friends.
Do you know, I actually think they are best friends.
Yeah, but none of them will ever admit it.
No, but it's when Jamie says that Isaac's his best friend, and Roy's like, fuck off. I'm like, they are besties. Roy and Jamie are besties, and who could have predicted this in season 1?
No one, mate. No one. The banter, it's bloody adorable. And the bromance
Jamie gets Roy a really nice present for
so wholesome.
The Uncle Day.
It's really nice. And then he says, yeah, but I got them to change the E to a U.
Yeah. And Roy's just like, I fucking love it.
Yeah, it's good. What he doesn't love is Phoebe's present, which is a tie-dye bright orange.
It's so sweet though.
Yeah, it's sweet. It's wholesome.
Red, orange, and yellow.
Because it's his name, for Roy.
Yeah.
If I was Roy, I would also have looked at this and been like, what do I do with this thing?
I would have put it on instantly.
No.
Tie-dye is cool.
He looks good in colors. He actually did look surprisingly good. Like
he looked very good in it.
When he rocks it to work and he's like strutting through and everyone's laughing at him.
Oh, and Nick Cave.
I was like, it's not that funny. Like it's funny, but it's like it's like a good look.
I cracked up when he's walking into work and you don't see him. You just see his face.
Yeah.
And you're seeing everyone's reactions. and I think it's Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds is playing.
Mm-hmm.
I was cracking up that scene. I thought that is such a funny scene. Everyone's in absolute shock.
Yeah.
And then obviously I was like, oh, he's wearing the top. And then and then even like Coach, Ted and Trent are all like, what?
Yeah.
They're shocked.
I love when Beard's like, Ted.
Yeah.
He's like trying to get Ted's attention. And there's this great like 2-shot as they come up to the camera and look at him. And it's really funny.
Well, I mean, like the comedy in this episode, I think was just spot on. Everything hit perfectly for me.
It was really
but that
funny.
scene I thought was hilarious. It's just so well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the end, he goes and he sort of talks to the as I've literally written her here as the hot Irish teacher. And he sort of realizes that he needs to apologize to Keely. And okay, this is actually a really good point. I say he realizes he needs to apologize to Keely and does precisely that. They fuck. That's my note. So, which is very true.
Factual. Yeah.
Factual. That's what I'm here for. What did you think of this Irish conversation, the conversation with the Irish lady? Because I kind of mixed on it.
Yeah, I was. I think, again, like, maybe it was one character too many in the episode. But obviously I think it was series 2, we met her. And yeah, like her and Roy defo had a bit of a flirt, a bit of like a vibe about them. And yeah, I remember my brother saying that he thought that Roy and Keely would split. Keely would end up with Jamie, and Roy would end up with the teacher. So when I thought, oh, we've not seen the teacher, and then obviously she cropped up, I was a bit like, well, where are they going with this? But I like the fact that it sort of helped him realize what he had to do for Keely.
Yeah.
And sort of helped him realize his feelings. But yeah, I did think it was just a bit, I don't know. I feel like he could have done it without talking to the teacher, but
yeah, it just felt like a bit of like a weird sidestep for me. Like I get the point. Like she said something that pushed him on, but like it didn't need to come from her. And to be honest, like
I agree.
In season 2, this teacher serves pretty much the same point, because you know how he's like mixed on the whole thing. I think it might have been to do with, was it with something with Keely, and him and Keely weren't getting along towards the end of season 2, and he gets the temptation with her and spends a bit of time with her, and they're quite flirty.
Yeah.
But then he suddenly realizes that that's not what he wants, and he wants to be committed to Keely, right? From memory. So it's sort of the same plot point again, like him now realizing that he needs to apologize to her.
Yeah, that's sort of like, that was the thing that I didn't quite get from it, is like, why is the teacher in this? Like, she doesn't need to be in it. We've already mentioned that this episode feels really stacked with characters and storylines, and I'm like, we just didn't need her.
No, definitely not. So yeah, when he spends the footy game trying to write different notes to Keely, and eventually he goes to Keely's house. Beautiful house, by the way. And he like tries to funnel it under the door, and Keely comes behind him and is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Brilliant.
What did you think of
liked it.
This dynamic?
I was really happy to see a Roy and Keely scene together, just because I feel like we've had a lot of them being separate this season, and like they've crossed over, they've had some interaction, but it's not been a lot. So I was really like chuffed that sort of Keely caught him putting that note in, and I found it particularly entertaining that it looks like she's reading it, and then she's like, I can't read your handwriting. Like she's looking at it for a while, and then she's like, I can't read it.
I think even the music starts going, and it's like dun 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 dun. Dun. Yeah,
I just thought that was great, and I liked that. I sort of liked that Roy said it to her. And then obviously he walks off. And even if it ended like that, because I thought, Keely's had like a lot of shit to deal with this episode. She's been quite sad. I thought maybe that's it, like, and they'll sort of reconcile in the next episode or whatever. But I thought, if it ended like that, like Roy just saying how he feels and then walking away, I would have been okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy that they hooked back up, and hopefully now everything's fine with Roy and Keeley. Because I think not only me but a lot of the other fans, really rooting for Roy and Keeley. So
yeah, we ship them.
Yeah.
What was a bit strange for me was when Rebecca and Keeley have their little chat at the end that we already talked about, and Roy walks out in the dressing gown. Keeley's sort of, because Rebecca's talking about how Rupert tried to hit on her and stuff, and Keeley's like, "Oh, thank God you're not that low that you'd go and get with someone from your past," or something like that. That's kind of the vibe of the conversation. And as she's saying that, Roy's coming up behind her, and like I was getting the vibe. It was like a weird timing thing in the script where I thought visually, I don't know if you got it this way, but I kind of read it as like is this a backstep for Keeley getting with Roy? Like there was something about the way it was shot, him creeping up behind her while she's saying it, and her being surprised when he's there. I don't know.
No, I understand what you mean. I think it was very much like, I think it was more Keeley saying that to Rebecca, because obviously Rupert is bad news for Rebecca. But whereas like I think Roy and Keeley complement each other really well. And I think, when Rebecca sees Roy, she's not like, I don't think she's necessarily shocked. She's not angry. It's almost like she's almost relieved that they're back.
Yeah. After screaming at him for weeks to get back with her.
Yeah. And I just think, that's how I sort of read it. I understand it was shot a bit odd. But I think it highlights how different Keeley and Rebecca are as well.
Yeah.
Almost again like hinting towards that Sense and Sensibility thing. But yeah, it was shot a bit, odd. But
yeah, it
yeah,
felt like we were seeing something that we shouldn't have been seeing when he was sneaking up. Like that's the kind of way that they shot it, and that's when I was like, oh, is he gonna take this the wrong way? What Keeley's saying, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think it's just, she's saying that to Rebecca, but obviously like Keeley's life is very different, and her relationship's very different. And obviously, like, I think pretty much everyone knows that, now that Roy's finally clocked on and sorted himself out, everyone knows that Roy and Keeley should be together.
Yep.
So yeah.
So by the end of the episode, Roy is wearing tie-dye to work just as his general vibe. I wonder if he's going to go with that going forward. It's like a darker tie-dye though that he's gone for, which I think is good for him. I was sort of trying to read this, trying to understand what this all means. And is this sort of him embracing his new colors? Like, is that sort of how we're looking at it? Like,
I think so.
We've seen him soften up throughout the show. He's a different guy. He's far more wholesome. He's a bit of a softie.
Yeah.
And is this him now sort of embracing that and far away from the all black angry man that we started the show with?
That's what I was thinking. Because obviously, like, Phoebe gives him the bright coloured tie-dye, and obviously he wears it because of her. And he's not particularly happy about it. But then, he then like sort of reconciles with Keeley, and then he's wearing tie-dye out of choice. And I'm like, this is him sort of, I think it's him, softening up and also realizing that he doesn't have to have this real tough, hard exterior.
Yeah.
Because obviously that was like a big issue with Keeley, is that like he ended things because he had a lot of shit going on and he didn't want to, affect her or anything like that. I can't remember exactly what he says in the letter. But obviously now, like, he's got that off his chest. He feels better. I think he's getting a bit more out of his shell.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, he's wearing tie-dye at the end out of choice, and it's fine. Like, he's comfortable about it.
Wholesome Roy. Yeah. We love wholesome Roy content.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Nate for a little bit, shall we? Again, I'm really enjoying they've got the balance right for me at the moment with Nate, like, because he's obviously quite separate from the main characters at the moment, but I think they've done a really good job the last few weeks of tying in his story and what his story is about with what the other characters are going through, because
Yeah.
he's going through a similar thing as Rebecca is at the moment. Like her speech that she delivers later on in the episode is essentially what Nate needed to hear, right?
Yeah.
So I like how this all happened off screen. He's quit West Ham. It's all over the news.
I was shocked when that's how the episode started. I was
What a way
like,
to
whoa,
start.
have I missed something? Yeah.
Yep. And Jade is off to Poland. So
Yeah.
he's like freaking out a little bit. He returns to his family home, and he sort of spends most of the episode quite lost. And he's looking through old photos of him when he was younger.
I found it very mirrored to Keely's story.
Yes.
In that part, they're both going through something. They're a bit lost, and they're in a lot of like self-pity and feeling sorry for themselves and not really know what to do. And they spend a lot of the episode alone.
Yeah.
That's what Keely does, walking around Richmond and at the pub. And that's what Nate does. Nate spends the good majority of the episode in bed, just like hiding from the cameras because he doesn't know if he's done the right thing or anything like that.
Yeah. And it also ties in with Roy's plot as well, because Roy's again at this like crossroad too, where he doesn't know if he's made a big decision breaking it with Keely, and he's sort of at the slump of figuring all that out at the moment. So I think it is pretty neatly written in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's good. In the end, he picks up his old violin, plays it. We have another like montage like we had in the Amsterdam episode where he's playing the violin, and it's cutting to all these different scenes and stuff. And I thought that was really wholesome.
That.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
The song from About Time as well.
In the episode. Oh, is it?
Yeah, I heard it and I was like, damn, they know me. They're doing this for me.
Yeah, that was specifically for Aiden.
Yeah, thank you. It said that in the script. We'll play this for Aiden. I thought we got a bit of closure that I didn't know we needed until we got it, which is him talking to his dad and sort of him and his dad 100%. Making peace. I never sort of thought that we actually would have needed that, but it actually worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned in previous episodes, especially like you've picked up on it a lot, that it's very like the show of Ted Lasso is very much based around like fathers and father-son, father-daughter relationships, anything like that, and even you've pointed out that like Nate's relationship with his dad is very, Nate constantly wants to seek his approval, and I think that's Nate was also trying to get that from Rupert. He wants approval from authority, and I think this episode it really gave us that closure after however many episodes that like Nate's dad is proud of him, and he's just pushing him. And it was such a beautifully written scene and a beautifully acted scene as well from both parties in it. I thought it was it's so simple, and it really was. I felt more connected to Nate after that scene and after this episode. Because obviously I spent the good majority of series 3 hating him. So I've really felt like we'd gotten to a side of him that, he's always wanted to come out. And it was just, I really enjoyed that scene. Really, really, so much.
And he's definitely on that redemption path.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to see. I thought it was really wholesome. His dad sort of saying like in the end, he just wants to see him be happy. Yeah. And that again ties into this whole through line of this week's episode. And then Nate goes and he writes a little apology note to Will, the kit man, and does he sets everything up, which I thought was Richmond.
Lovely. Yeah.
So lovely. So good to see.
Because I think Will is a character, he's a very secondary character. He's very much like comedic relief in a lot of scenes. And you do forget that when Nate was made a coach at Richmond, he gave Will a lot of shit. He gave him so much shit, and it was horrible. And I think, Nate clearly did that because all the players gave him shit when he was a kit man.
Yeah.
And I think finally, after this episode and after, being in a relationship with Jade and having that chat with his dad, you know, Nate's realized he doesn't have to be like that. He doesn't have to portray that side of him that he thinks people should see. Like, he can just be himself. And I thought that was really, really lovely what he did for Will. Because again, like, something I never thought I needed, but it felt so right.
It does, yeah. It sort of highlights how, going back into that through line again, is that he went into the sport because he loved the sport, and he got himself a bit lost on the way and sort of forgot whilst he did it, and he got power hungry, and that's why he was taking out all that anger on Will.
Yeah, and I think it also highlighted, and it highlighted that, you know, which is again something that we'll go on to in Rebecca's story in this episode, but it very much highlighted to never forget where you started.
Mm-hmm.
You know, never forget where you started and why you started, because I think, you know, we have a lot of characters that have gotten lost and then, you know, they come back round, and we've seen that happen to Nate. You know, he's got, you know, he worked his way up, like he said, like, had the passion, got lost, got power hungry, was trying to, like, get approval from all these people. And I think in this episode, he's remembered why he got into it, where he started. And I think that's why, out of anyone, like, he went and did something nice for Will.
Yeah.
Because that's where Nate started.
Bloody wholesome.
And I just thought that was lovely. Yeah.
Because
that links with the whole Rupert-Rebecca thing.
Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. So speaking of Rebecca, like we mentioned, Edwin Akufo is back in town. He plans on starting a Super League, which just sounds stupid, just in the name itself. It's like, welcome to the Super League.
Did you know that there was plans for a Super League?
Was it called the Super League?
I believe so.
Because that's stupid. That's a stupid league.
It was a couple of years ago, right. I think. And yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I remember it was basically like 6 big teams in the league, in the Prem in the UK, and they all sort of went up to start this Super League, and all the fans absolutely hated it. And then each team pulled out of it because of all the backlash they received, and it never went anywhere. But it was like Man United, Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea,
probably Liverpool.
Yeah, it was like, you know, all the big. I think it was even like 4 or 6 teams or something like that, and yeah, they were like, oh, you know, it was announced, and it got so much backlash that each team pulled out of it because it was all about money. It was all about money.
Yeah, which is a great thing. So that Rebecca addresses during this episode, which she gets invited to sort of the meeting of it to sort of pitch the idea. She gets invited by Rupert there, and she sort of goes and vents to Higgins about it after being
which I loved.
Yes, but she's there because like Keely's not available, and like a bunch of her friends that like Sassy's not available. Now, we got to say, Higgins has not had much of a storyline, if any storyline this season.
Not.
The biggest Higgins storyline is that this guy is deprived of fucking tea, and we need to let Higgins drink his tea in peace because the guy keeps fucking spilling it all over him. And I got to say, it is the funniest shit ever. The performance is so good because
he's so good.
When Rebecca walked in on him and he just kind of like fumbles with it a little bit, I was like, oh, that's funny. It's a continuation of the Higgins tea saga. Yeah. And then like as soon as I had that thought, he like puts it down and flops it onto himself and like makes an even bigger mess of it. And I literally lost my shit laughing. That was my favorite joke in the episode.
I loved it. I actually wrote down Higgins is underrated and underused.
Yes.
Because, you know, he's so funny and he's such a great character, and I just want more of him. I want more Higgins.
Definitely. Like we need the Higgins spin-off. That's what we need.
Yes.
So Rebecca's sort of like, I don't want to be the diversity hire. And as someone who has worked in a lot of film stuff, which is at the moment pushing a lot of inclusivity and things rightly so. I literally was having this conversation with a girl the other day, and she felt like she'd been invited to something just as the diversity talent, the diversity hire, not because of her actual talent.
Yeah.
And I feel like that sucks that people have to think like that sometimes. It's like, oh, you just want me to be your positive
Yeah.
statistic and not for what I can actually bring.
Yeah. But I will say, like, I completely agree with what Higgins said. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the way Higgins, like, who cares why you're invited? Like, just go. And like
Yeah.
that is so how I would see it.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, you've got the invite, you've got your foot in the door. Like, just go and see what it's like, what it's about. You know, and even when she gets there, you can see that it's all very, yeah, it's a lot of old sleazy men,
Old white men.
yeah, who are sleazy
Yeah.
and, you know, rich, so they feel like they can say what they want. And it's just, you know, it's a bit like, oh, did she make the right decision? But I think she did.
Yeah.
I 100% think she did. So
Yeah.
big up Higgins for, you know, persuading her to go.
Mm-hmm. It's like, if you are going to bring someone in as the diversity hire, you better listen to what she says. You know, like she
Yeah.
was there. She made a good point for herself. Let's get straight into that stuff, because that is like where they
Yeah.
kind of yell the plot at you, like the through line, the theme of the episode at you, which is literally Rebecca's job these last like 3 weeks, is her being like,
Yes.
this is the moral of the
That
story.
is what she's done. Yeah.
More subtle this week, I'll say. She got away with it this week, but yeah.
I'd say this was the least subtle episode.
Really?
You know, yeah, it wasn't that she, like, you know, in the episode with Ted and his son, she's just on the phone to Ted.
Yeah.
Whereas this episode, it's just like voiceover.
I suppose like the reason it worked for me was because she's not like,
it's like a narration.
like Nate, Keeley, and Roy were all going through, were all like, the message was directed pretty much at them, right? If you look at it.
Yeah.
But like, she wasn't saying it to them. And that's why it worked more for me. She wasn't just yelling.
No, I know.
I hate when.
I mean, I bloody loved it. So
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
great.
have any problems with it.
Yeah, I hate when characters that they only realize something internally within themselves. I hate when they realize that because someone has just told them that. And I much prefer it when they click onto it themselves, which is what I think happened a lot more in this episode. And Rebecca's voiceover just sort of rounded it off for the audience, I think.
Can I just say quickly before we get on to the voiceover and what Rebecca says?
I think I know what you're going to say.
Oh, I don't know if you are.
Okay.
Rupert's office is so Death Star.
It's the Death Star.
It really is, because it only cuts to him briefly sat at his desk with the circle window.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
dun,
why
dun,
does his office look
dun,
like that?
Dun, 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 dun.
And why is he always in black?
He's fucking Darth Vader, Vinny. That's like, why.
Why is he always in black?
He's Darth Vader. That's it. That's the answer.
Roy was always in black.
Yes, true.
So
no, but
for some reason, like,
Rupert's in like
why
long
is Rupert
coats.
Always in black?
Long black coats. He's the Vader symbolism, all right?
He really is. And that office, I was just like, why is his office like this? Why does his office look like the Death Star?
Yeah.
It's spot on. Well, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
What I thought you were going to say is that they sort of bring back the little Sam, like she bumps into Sam, and they're like, and then she brings out the match thing from Ola's, and then the soldier from that Ted gave her in season 1, and it's that thing where it's like, who's she gonna end up with? Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be Sam, mainly because they've obviously done that last season, and
I've never liked that plot. I've never been a fan of it.
No, it's just felt a bit odd. I do think that it's going to be Ted and Rebecca.
Yeah, Ted Becker.
I don't know. They didn't really have any scenes this episode, so I don't know.
Ted didn't really have any scenes this episode.
No, it wasn't a very Ted episode.
No, yeah. Yeah, which I think is a little bit of a problem at the moment with the show. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't mind. This is... I actually wrote something about this for a video essay, actually, that I haven't edited yet. But I sort of was writing it about how Ted has... The show's at its best when it's about mental health and like team morale and that sort of thing. It's sort of turned into a bit of a soap in season 3, where it's a lot of just relationship, will they, won't they,
and a lot of different characters.
A lot of different characters, and it takes away for me from what was working best and has always worked best with the show, which has
Yeah.
been Ted's plotline. And it's okay to deviate from that, but it just feels like there's so much just like love rom-com stuff going on, which I adore individually, but there's just so much of it that you lose track of the Ted arc. And like with 2 episodes left, and I don't think Ted's done much since like episode 6 or 7.
Yeah, so I think that obviously we're skipping over a bit here, but Ted is in the last scene with Rebecca.
Yeah.
And Rebecca sort of had this realization that she doesn't care about beating Rupert. And, it's the episode sort of ends with her and Ted. And I feel like it sets up very, very nicely for the next, two episodes?
2 episodes to go.
Yeah, I think it sets up very nicely for the next 2 episodes for them to be very Ted focused, because they've tied off Keely and Roy in this episode.
Kind of.
They've come in. I'd say they have. There's no. They're not. They're back together.
I gotta say that if that is that, they've not. I don't feel like it was that fulfilling when it happened. But that's the segue.
No,
you
but
keep saying your thing.
I'm not saying that they're not going to be in the rest of the show.
No,
I mean,
I know.
In terms of main stories, like Keely and Roy back together. Nate's sort of coming towards the end of his redemption. I think that's going to end with him confronting Ted.
Yeah,
something like that. Rebecca's had this realization, so I think now it very much leaves it to focus a lot more on Ted and Ted's story in the next 2 episodes.
Probably right.
So I think that's probably why we've had like a Ted light episode this week. But I think it ties up and it progresses a lot of these characters so that more focus can be on Ted, be on Richmond.
Yeah.
See where that goes. That was my thought process behind it. That's why I think, a lot of these characters in this episode achieve something. They progress. I did really like the episode. So there is a lot going on, but I think there's a lot going on for a purpose,
Yeah, I agree. There were, ticking off a lot of things that needed to be ticked off, I think.
What did you think about, because obviously Rebecca has that big speech. Absolutely love the scene.
Amazing.
I really want to say, I liked the fact that, they're all there, fuck off. She goes on that big rant about, remembering why you got into it because you love football.
Yeah.
And she says that story about that boy sneaking into Richmond every week. And the camera's cutting between her and Rupert. And I was like, is this about Rupert? And then obviously, he goes back, buys a club. You find that it is about Rupert. He gives the security guard a raise, no questions asked. What did you think about them, making Rupert a bit more human in this episode? Because obviously he's such a villain, and he's been a villain for 3 seasons. You absolutely hate him. And this episode felt like we saw a different side of him.
Yeah. I thought it was good to build him up, and then there's a slight romanticness to the way he's looking at her, and sort of the way she's talking about it a little bit. But then when he goes in to kiss her and she pulls back, because right as they're getting close, you're sort of like, no, don't. I swear to Christ,
that's what I was like.
If you kiss, then this is such a disservice to Rebecca's character.
Yeah.
And she backs up, and it just so shows her growth, A, moving on from him, but B, her whole speech about, we do this because we love it, and she's found her love for football and knows how important it is to the fans, and that is so far from where she was at the start of the show, when she literally was Richmond boss because she wanted to tear it down,
run it to the ground. And I think it's even throughout that whole scene with cutting between Ted and Rupert, and then at the end, everyone else is covered, they're all covered in food. They're all a bit disgruntled. Rupert and Rebecca are just laughing about
Yeah.
it, and a guy's like, "Oh, last time I saw you two in a room together was your wedding day," and it's like, "Where's this going?
Yeah.
What's going on here?"
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, like I was like, "What are they doing? What?" I literally I was like, "I don't know where this is gonna go. I don't know if they're gonna go that way or if they're just hinting." I was like, I can't predict it. And yeah, I thought it was good to sort of humanize Rupert a little bit. Because I do really like his character, even though I hate him at the same time. But I think it was so important for Rebecca's character to stand up to all of these wealthy men.
Yeah, it's a lot of growth.
It's almost put them in their place.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Rupert tries to make a move on her, and she's like, "What the fuck do you think you're doing?"
Fuck
She's
that.
like, "Absolutely not." And I was like, queen.
Yeah.
Absolute queen. And he looks like he can't believe it. He's like, "What?
I've been denied? A woman does not want to sleep with me?"
He is absolutely shocked about it.
Slay. I love it.
And I think that really shows Rebecca's development, because obviously they were together for quite a while. And I think that just that scene shows that he probably got his way quite a lot of the time. And the fact that Rebecca's been like, in this scene, no, he can't believe it.
Yeah. And I also think that's now going to push Rupert to be like the real big bad in the next 2 episodes. She's denied him. We saw what happened when Nate denied him. Like, you could tell that obviously, like, Nate quit, but it was obviously tense before he quit. We didn't see any of it, but I feel like that would have been the vibe.
Yeah.
That's
true. That is
Rupert
true.
doesn't like not getting the candies that he wants to get. You know what I mean? So
I didn't think of that.
Anyways, Rebecca, we've already touched on her meeting with Keeley at the end, which was nice.
Yeah.
We didn't really mention the scene where Rebecca's in the mirror and she sees like her younger self, and they do like the rah thing. And I think I was great.
Laughing so much.
See, I love it when, like, not in a funny way. Like, when I watch it, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, because when it comes to like big meetings and things like that, I struggle with confidence to be the boss ass bitch sometimes as well. And literally, since watching Ted Lasso, now my thing has been like, I just take a big breath and I'm just like, like I don't fucking go like that in the mirror. But I think it is like a wholesome technique.
I was laughing. It just went on for so long. And I was like, fair play to Hannah Waddingham, because I would not, I would not be able to do that and keep a straight face for as long as she did. So that's why I found it hilarious.
And it was like this great symbolic thing as well, with like her, like, obviously looking back at her past now that she's reached this milestone.
Yeah.
In terms of
and then
growing so much.
It also comes up again at the meeting where, she sat at a table with all these old white privileged men.
Yeah.
And then instantly she sees them as all little boys. And it's like, well, like, don't let them intimidate you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she does. She doesn't let them intimidate her. And I just thought it was really interesting for me for them to do that, but I think it worked really well.
Yeah, definitely. That's pretty much everything. Like I said, moral of the story is pretty much we need to focus on the things that we want to be doing and stick through their ups and downs, but ultimately we're doing it because it's what we love. And that's that was my takeaway. Yeah.
And the episode ends with Rebecca talking to Ted. She spits tea in his face.
Yep.
Which I really enjoyed. He's just I was like, what? I like the fact that she was like, oh, it just feels like a rite of passage now.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. And I think, you can see that Rebecca's character is very much like got a much more positive mindset. Sort of feels a bit more established.
Yeah.
And I think, the focus is now, with that ending scene, the focus is now getting shifted onto Ted. So I'm very intrigued. I like that Rebecca doesn't care about Rupert anymore. So that's good development.
Good. She's had some good development, and that is why Rebecca is my MVP, my most valuable player for the episode. She spelled out the plot to us. She told us the themes, and she's conquered the most. So Rebecca's the MVP. I think this has been like a Rebecca heavy season, like in terms of her winning our MVP list.
Yes, I would agree. Rebecca is also my MVP. So,
Cool.
I mean, it couldn't be anyone else.
It couldn't.
So,
It couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say maybe Nate as a backup.
Yeah.
Just because I think, he went through a lot this episode as well. But
yeah,
this episode was stolen by Hannah Waddingham again for me. Her acting was incredible. I really liked the entire scene. I liked the scene of her talking, like cutting between all the different characters. But yeah, the whole scene of her at that table, just Rebecca, 100% MVP.
Yeah,
Not
for the
a
last
hard
few
one
weeks,
this week at all.
for the last few weeks, Nate has sort of been on the outskirts of my MVP pickings.
Yeah,
but it's like
he's close, but he's not there.
Close because he's doing so much good within himself and always connecting to the moral of the story. But he's not doing enough for like other characters, because we sort of weigh up a few things with this. Like they've got to do enough for the plot and do enough for themselves, conquer enough, but they also have to, help the people around them, because the most valuable player isn't always the one that kicks the goal,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, well, it's a football show. That's what I'm trying to do. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Ted Lasso post-match. We have 2 more episodes to go. Spooky.
2 more.
Then we'll be even more unemployed. Then, even more. Well, you know what I mean. We'll have no podcasts. So
I'm employed, so speak for yourself, Aidan.
I'm employed too. I just mean this podcast unemploys us, that we've employed ourselves and earn no money through is going to unemploy us. That's the point I'm getting to.
Very true. Unless they decide to do another season.
That's true. Make it happen, Ted Lasso post-match fans. Make them do a Ted Lasso season 4 just for us. Once again, it's going to say just for Aidan and Vinny. Yep. Hit Brett up, my boy. Right.
Maybe Aidan can talk to him in his dreams.
That's what the third dream's gonna be. It's like, Brett, my man, hear me out. I need you to do a season 4. And he'll be like, no, I'm Hercules in the MCU, man. I don't have time for Ted Lasso anymore. And I'll be like, Brett, you fucking listen to me, man.
Yeah, just play him the speech from this episode.
Yeah.
Remember why you started.
And on that note, see you next week, everybody.
See you next week.